It's going.
Okay, today I'm going to be talking to you about why we should have drivers have to retake their exams for whenever every 3 years or just at least once every 5, just so that way they can realize that they are making mistakes. They may not be trying to, but they can forget them. So it's just something they need to be paying attention to and take care of. And so how many of you just know maybe a bad driver or just somebody who is forgetful? They forget some of the basics. Because see, I have a video right here that I'm going to show you right now. And there's multiple of these videos. It just shows some dash cams. And I can show it, the whole video, I can show you just parts, pieces of it. And you'll see there's just, like right here, this one, it also explains just because the light is green doesn't mean you get to go. So you got to be willing to pay attention to that. And if you had to take your driving test again, you would have to pay attention to that. Because you would be reminded of those things. Just because I know, at least for myself, when I took my driving test, I paid more attention and I had to think more. Just because I had somebody who was grading me, and if I didn't do it, I wasn't going to get the test. And now, again, shows right here, this one it's bright, he can barely see, and motorcycles are flying, but he goes and he barely sees it and misses it. That could have been a near wreck, and that could have damaged his car, and he could have hurt himself badly. Now, not every driver who has these accidents, it's not their fault. Sometimes they're just forgetful of the rules. And I'm not saying that you need to go take your test just because of being forgetful. It's a normal human thing. But it would just help to be reminded of them. Not just that way, not like as a penalty, just that way it's beneficial to you. You learn from it. You can become a better driver because of it. And it's something that every driver needs, is just to be reminded of the fact that certain rules exist that maybe they're not your everyday rules. Because, like, we live in Texas here, or at least I do. And in Texas, we never see snow, especially not near Houston. I've had snow once in my 20 years of living. I've had it here. So if it snowed tomorrow or this winter, 90% of the people wouldn't have any idea what to do. So those are rules that, whereas if you had to retake your driving test and maybe they handed you a pamphlet and it showed you just how to drive in different situations, it would have a thing on there that probably said how to drive in snow, how to drive in heavy rain, how to drive on sleet, and that type of stuff. Just so that way you don't freak out because of it. Because there's been over 38,000 deaths on the road, and that is by the car estimates, the fatality crash estimates website that I used, that shows that there have been 38,000. That's 38,000 deaths because of cars. Now, not all those were just because of people being forgetful and not knowing the rules or just by mistake. Some of those were other reasons, but a majority of them could have been avoided, or at least could have been prevented from being a death if the driver had been more alert of what the scenario is or how bad driving under those conditions could be. Some people forget that you're not supposed to drive for more than like 3 hours at a time. Others forget that you're not supposed to drive early in the morning if you were up late the night before. Heck, I know a lot of people do it, but sometimes you just got to think, is the risk worth the reward? And could you have been reminded of those rules and also the ways to maybe get around it by taking the class again? And it would just help out people. Just because who doesn't want safer roads? Who wouldn't want to be able to go out to take their kid when they're teaching them to drive? Have them go out there and have the roads look calm and safe. Inviting them in, rather than when you go on 45 and everybody's honking and it's busy and it's horrible to try and drive on sometimes. Or you hit 5 o'clock traffic and nobody goes. Granted, some of that's necessary and it's going to happen. But other parts of it could be easily avoided if there weren't as many wrecks. So just having drivers retake their tests could both help remind them of what they need to know and help just them to remember it. Because if they're being tested over it and they're having to drive that way, they can go, at least for that year before, they'll be sitting there going, wait, I have my driving test. I need to start practicing making sure I'm staring at my mirrors just so that way they know I'm looking at it. Or I need to practice making sure I can parallel park. I know a lot of people don't parallel park often. One of my friends said she went to a tournament and that she actually had to parallel park, and she was sitting there. She didn't know how to do it. Her dad had to do it because she didn't know how. She had taken her driving test more recently, but he did it more. So if she had to take her test again, even once or twice more, she would know how to do it. Or at least would have had a better idea to where she could have trusted herself with it. Now, these things, they're not mandatory. You don't have to know every situation, but just having the reminder of it could lead to safer roads and just safer drivers in general. And who doesn't want to have a safer driver on the road? And this is why we need to start having drivers have to retake their driving tests at least every 5 years, better if it's every 3, and just remind them of the rules and the situations that occur on the road. The stuff you're not going to be prepared for every day, and the stuff that just doesn't happen all the time. And